Today's guest is Melinda Morris Zanoni. She's the managing partner of the nationally known and Chambers-ranked Apollo Sports and Entertainment Law Group. Apollo Law is a member of the prestigious GGI Global Alliance with offices in 126 countries. Wow, didn't know that. Giving Apollo a worldwide platform and reach for its clients. So before I welcome Melinda to the show, she's got an incredible list of accolades, honors, including, quote, a force to be reckoned with in the sports and entertainment law industry. She's a sought-after TV commentator. She's a Game Changer, which is Sports Business Journal's annual cohort of female leaders on the rise, and Melinda is certainly one of those. She's been called a super lawyer in the area of sport and entertainment, placing her among the top 1% and one of the very top women in sports, entertainment, and media law in the country. So, Melinda, thank you for being our guest today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Carl. I appreciate you having me.
Well, listen, without me going through the longer list of elements in your bio, let's start with sort of what got you into law in the first place. And as you moved along your career path, who, either an individual or more than one, your call, helped you along the way that you might characterize as the best boss you ever had or the best influencer you ever had, what you learned from that individual or those folks, and how you use those learnings today?
Yeah, thanks for that. So I think I always wanted to be an attorney from a very young age, various influences. Our family attorney when I was growing up was just incredibly impressive, very measured. He always had something intelligent to say. And I would listen to my parents when they were tackling life issues and say, well, what would Jimmy say? And I realized he was more than a counselor. So, that combined with Seinfeld, one of my favorite lines was he said, life is like Monopoly and only the lawyers read the rules. And I've always been curious. I like to know how things work. So I think that's why I always wanted to be an attorney. Sports and entertainment attorney, because that's something I've always been passionate about. I grew up in Chicago, which is a big sports town, so I had lots of exposure to the Cubs and the Bulls and the Blackhawks. I played tennis competitively throughout high school, and I've always loved all things entertainment, film, books, art, music. So I think that was the genesis of why I wanted to do what I do. As far as how I got my start, I was an attorney in Chicago, and then I was an attorney in Charlotte at very large law firms that had a corporate practice. But I kept building out my own sports and entertainment law practice because it's what I was passionate about. And at the point that I had a great group of sports, media, entertainment clients, I've always, Carl, taken the approach of why not me? That's always been my approach to life and my career. So in 2008, I started Apollo Law and looked back. But I will say that having cut my teeth in corporate law kind of permeates everything that we do. So in sports, we do a lot of M&A transactions. In entertainment, we do a lot of financing transactions. So having that background was incredible, but it was a risk. I mean, leaving the security and the paycheck of a large multi-practice law firm and betting on myself to start Apollo Sports Entertainment Law Group with a very narrow but deep practice was risky. And Carl, I just kept telling myself, fear is temporary, but regret is permanent. Fear is temporary, but regret is permanent. And I just sort of spoke it into existence, right? So that's how I sort of got in. As far as, who was my best boss or mentor along the way, if it's okay with you, I'm going to answer that in two parts.
Please do. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So first, way back at the start of my career, I was very young when I started practicing law. I think I was 23 years old. I was a kid. And the managing partner of my firm in Chicago was a gentleman named Alan Fagel. And because I was young and I was a woman in what was then a very male-dominated industry, I was very focused on professionalism at all times, right? How I dressed, how I spoke, how I presented myself. I was always very, very formal. And Alan would invest in young attorneys at the firm, and he had a way of putting them at ease. So some stories that stand out are, I was on a conference call for a financing transaction. We represented the Pritzker family, and we were doing, I think it was something to do with Millennial Park. I was in the middle of this very serious conference call with these very serious people, and Alan, the managing partner of the firm, walked in my office and he just was completely distracting. I mean, he's talking to me, he's offering me cookies, and at one point he pulls out a hammer and he starts banging a nail in the wall to hang art, decides he doesn't like where it is as he's talking to me, rips it out, goes over, bangs on the other side to hang the art, and I'm thinking, Alan, do you think maybe we could hang the art at a later time? I'm on a phone call here, for you and your client. And there's 100 stories like that. But when I sort of look at it in retrospect, I think this was his way of teaching me not to take everything so seriously, right? That great line, if no one dies, the rest can be fixed.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah, and I think that's what he was doing through actions. And I think about the holiday parties he hosted. You couldn't do it today. They were fun. Even the youngest associates like myself were encouraged to speak their mind, and he would support your position even when it wasn't popular. When we would do anything out of the office, even going to lunch, he'd say, grab your business cards. Every single person you walk by in that street's a potential client. You got to be ready. I can still hear him to this day. Now, as an attorney, the biggest compliment you'll ever get is when the other side hires you. But it's because I view even adversaries as potential clients because of something that this managing partner taught me way back when. And, the third thing I remember well is we finished a deal and he told me, Melinda, you're going to be a really good lawyer. And at 23, you realize you don't learn a damn thing in law school that actually helps you with the practice. And having that information was everything at a young age. So what a great way to start my career. So my second part of that answer is I'm going to pivot to today because I think it's really important to never stop learning, right? And as an attorney, I haven't had a boss in a very long time. My clients are my boss. So a standout to me today is Felix Sabates. And you know who he is. I mean, he's owned luxury car dealerships, including Mercedes. He owns Trinity Yacht. He was one of the first investors in the World Football League. An NBA franchise founding owner with Michael Jordan. Hockey team owner, NASCAR team owner. He's one of the most influential philanthropists in America today. And he's self-made, it's a fascinating story. He was a roommate of Castro's son while attending a Havana military school. He fled in the back of a truck, washed pots and pans at a hospital, unloaded boxes at convenience stores, washed cars at a rental agency, found success in the car sale business, and then he goes on to buy the company that introduces, name it, right? Nintendo, Atari, Pac-Man, Teddy Ruxpin, Super Mario Brothers, all of that to the United States. So you have this kid who dropped out of high school and he goes on to build an empire. And in the media, they compare him to Rockefeller and Carnegie. So why do I consider him a mentor today? Everybody likes him. Everybody. He knows and has friends in every corner of the planet. He has this relentless work ethic to this day when he need not have a work ethic to this day. And I learn something every time I'm out with him. He's fun. You learn by osmosis. The way that Felix handles business matters and people is very unique. He approaches every relationship with a, how do I make sure this person speaks well of me attitude? Which I think is admirable, being sort of a big picture guy. And so I, to this day, learn how to deal with people from him. When he has to fire people, he fires with dignity. When a deal ends for whatever reason, he makes sure it ends elegantly. And so I'm trying to be a good mentor to our people at Apollo and young women that come after me so that someday they're on your great podcast, Carl, and they answer me to this question. That's my goal.
Well, those are two great examples, and there's a thread there, which is, and you said it, your clients are your bosses.
Right.
And when you're in a service sector, as you are, listen, we all know this. Clients, there are clients, and then there are clients, right? So they run the spectrum and the gamut of ease, if you will, fun and a pleasure to be around, all the way to the other end of the spectrum, which is they can be incredibly challenging, but you have to be able to have the grace, the aplomb, sort of kindness, if you will, with firmness, with clarity. We run our business, between the lines, period. But those two examples you just gave sort of had, one, don't take yourself too seriously, which I applaud greatly. And secondly, you're in the service business, so serve your clients. And the second example is an amazing, story around from jumping in a pickup truck and escaping to now one of the leading global philanthropists on the planet. So I'm curious about a couple things. At the outset, we talked about Apollo Group and the fact that it has global alliance offices in 126 countries, which is extraordinary. So walk us through how Apollo was structured and how your alliance works vis-a-vis all these disparate global offices.
Yeah, so the genesis of it, Carl, is when we started Apollo, everyone said, you can't start a sports entertainment law firm in Charlotte, North Carolina. It's not a big enough market. Now, I did have a little secret sauce in that I live in LA, and so I have a deep network and connectivity to a big hub of the industry. But I really wanted to do this here. It's where my kids were being raised, what have you. And because we were the first in, we kind of, I like to think, own the market. There's not many people, if any, really doing what we do. I think there's people that dabble in it or they want to do it, but this is all we do. I mean, we are narrow but deep. And so the good news is we built this thing before sports exploded, before Charlotte exploded. Charlotte's the fastest growing city in the country right now. The bad news is you become a victim of your own success. So we have had a lot of large firms in New York, Charlotte that want or LA that want a footprint in Charlotte that have reached out to us for takeover, for acquisition. And so we had a lot of board meetings and a lot of partner meetings and a lot of thought around, do we want to stay independent or with a bigger brand? And I think the group think was we'd like to stay independent because we've just created this really cool culture. And not only have we created a really cool culture, but our clients really like our personal touch, right? If they want to call me, they get me. If they want to call another partner, they get that partner. And we didn't want to lose that personal touch. So once we became chamber ranked and got on this sort of like worldwide radar, because we do have a worldwide practice, we have intellectual property portfolios, we file all over the world. Alliances started reaching out to us. We believe the gold standard of the alliance is this GGI. And so what it allowed us to do, Carl, is it allowed us to join into a bigger group where we say we have 32,000 employees all over the world in all of these countries, but we still get to be independent. So for example, we're working on a huge financing transaction right now, and we have pulled in, it's multidisciplinary. So we pulled in investment bankers from the group. We've pulled in co-counsel in different areas from the group. And it just allows us to do very large scalable deals all over the world and have a team where it's still streamlined for our client and they don't have a team of 15 different firms that they have to report to. It's fantastic.
Well, that sounds sort of like a panacea. You get the benefit of scale and competencies that maybe don't sit with your smaller group, but you are able to maintain your independence as well as continue to nurture the culture you've built. Culture is so huge in business, and the biggest risk in being acquired or merging, the benefit obviously is money as a practical matter. The risk is clashing cultures and how those cultures get integrated. I've been on both sides of that desk several times in my career, most recently when 6th Street Capital and via Legends acquired ASM Global.
Yes,
That transaction occurred 7 months ago. And I think, in continuing to keep my ear to the ground, let me say it a simple way. The math equation of an M&A transaction is the easy part. Integrating the cultures and integrating the competencies, both back of house and front of house, that's the hard part. And I think every large transaction, and it doesn't even have to be that large, goes through similar kinds of cultural challenges, if you will.
You couldn't be more accurate in that. And I think people don't understand that going into an M&A. But when you try to slam together two different disparate practices, people, cultures, it takes sometimes years to get fully integrated. And I think your example of the ASM and the Legends is an excellent one. So yes, so you're exactly right. So we are trying to ward that off. And I think we've figured out how to square that circle.
Well, that's awesome. So you touched on intellectual property rights. That's in many instances, the holy grail of a business practice is the underlying rights and intellectual property that business owns. One of the more interesting things as we race toward artificial intelligence, generative AI, all those kinds of things is, for the most part, those tools scrape the universe of content, right? Literally scrape the universe.
Literally.
And they extract things that may or may not be protected by underlying IP rights. I'm really interested in the world of sport and entertainment, underlying IP, whether it's a screenwriter or whether it's a singer-songwriter, a musician, or whether it's a league or a team franchise. The IP is sacred. So how are you and your group grappling with this literally changing every single day world of artificial intelligence and the impact it has on intellectual property rights?
Yeah, with a lot of energy. AI is a very transformative tool in all industries, not just law, sports, entertainment, because it has the ability to increase productivity and simplify your decision making and automate this routine task when it's used responsibly. What I tell people is you better embrace this. You better get on board. Billions of dollars is being poured into it. And so it's very crucial for any kind of leadership as we move forward, because, I sort of believe where there's a potential for disruption is where the opportunity is. As a firm, we're staying ahead of the curve. And look, Carl, it's a hockey stick learning curve, right? Because of the amount of data that can be mined and scraped so quickly. I would say, in the legal field, it's streamlining the practice of law from legal research to drafting documents, summarizing case law, because the AI can quickly sift through huge amounts of information. But part and parcel of that, as you wisely just put your finger on, we're also seeing a rise in copyright and trademark disputes surrounding the generative AI-created material. So the U.S. Court of Appeals in D.C. just affirmed that the Copyright Act does not protect works created entirely by AI. You need some kind of human authorship for protection. And I think that was the court came down the right side of the law in that decision. But, AI is in its infancy. It's evolving. So, we've all heard the story about the lawyer who submitted a Supreme Court brief with, that cited fake case law because their associate had used AI and putting it together. I wouldn't want to be that guy. But, there's oops. But there's oops in every industry, right? I mean, the Microsoft chatbot was giving entrepreneurial advice on how to start a business in New York and said, one, if someone alleges sexual harassment, you can just fire them. I feel like that's not right. And two, if you want to start a food business and you find out that rats have been nibbling on the food, still okay to serve. So you've got these chatbots that are encouraging people to break the law. So it's very embryonic, this technology, and we're all sort of just trying to figure it out. I think in sports, obviously, it's all data-driven. Today, data, not oil, is the world's most valuable resource, right? And so we're using large amounts of data to make real-time predictions in sports. So we're tracking player performance, we're predicting injuries, we're analyzing close decisions for referees. So we get to reduce human error, we get to eliminate human emotion. I think that's a good thing. We can do real-time game strategy by amassing this data and finding patterns that the human eye can't see. And that's just the data piece of it. We're not even talking yet about the personalization of the fan experience with data-driven marketing, right? You get real-time analytics. I mean, I like to tell my team owners, look, your sports stadium is not a sports stadium. It's a smart arena. That's what it is.
Has to be. It has to be. Because everybody who goes there has got a phone, right? Which does a lot of different things now, depending on which model you have. But if you don't have a robust Wi-Fi system in your stadium or arena, you're going to provide or deliver a less than optimal experience for your guests, your fans, your patrons that come to the show. I loved your analogy about oil. So let me sort of unpack that a little bit. Crude oil that comes out of the ground is crude, just like raw data is crude.
Yeah.
In the oil business, you have to get from crude to a refinery, And then out of the refining process comes multiple kinds of petroleum-based products, not just gasoline, right? Same is true with data. Collecting volumes of data and warehousing it, that's crude. You need a method to extract the right data, get it in a usable form so that conclusions can be drawn, strategies can be discussed around the data story. The data doesn't lie per se, but what I think might be challenging for those that are just new to the data world, and that's happening every day, is understanding what the data is actually telling you and extracting the relevant data in a timely manner so that it can be acted upon. And you can riff on that, but that's my perspective.
No, I couldn't have said it better. I mean, 100%, that's exactly accurate. And we're seeing sort of that same analogy on the entertainment side as well, because the AI, it allows for content personalization, right? So streaming platforms have been doing this for years, recommending shows based on viewing habits. Netflix, Prime's been doing it with consumption for years. So the ability to sort of analyze audience behavior and tailor it to content real time allows AI to be used for music production, script writing, film editing, designing video games, making movies, all that post-production that people used to sit in the back and color and edit and don't need it anymore.
Right.
And
this is a perfect example. This tool that we're on right now, Riverside, it allows me as the podcast host and creator to take this session and edit it in a fairly simple way, because it's got all the back-end mechanisms in place, as opposed to taking all this raw video and audio, sending it to a sound engineer, sending it to a video editor, and having them pick it apart and then put it back together. Timely, or time not good use of, said it the wrong way, but also there's a cost factor, right? So as these tools get smarter, more efficient, awesome, but it's back to the crude, raw story. The user has to be able to navigate the tool and extract out of the tool the relevant and most efficient ways and means to get to an end product. And I think that's what data mining, ultimately, the conclusionary aspects of data mining and servicing that data in the most relevant way is changing our world every day. But you on the IP side, on the AI side, you live it in a very unique space, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, it's the whole spectrum. It's the podcast creator up to, look at the 24 Paris Olympics, right? AI was used to enhance viewer experiences because it created highlights that were available immediately to the users. So you saw engagement at the 24 Olympics was at an all-time high historically. In entertainment, there's a film that was made entirely of AI-generated clips, entirely 100% film, and it premiered at the Berlin International Film Festival. So, and I'm not saying there aren't issues. We all are aware of the issues from deep fakes, all of that stuff. But we haven't even touched on how much we're going to be able to do with this. Something we see from intellectual property side is we're sending holograms on tour, right? We're sending deceased celebrities on tour. Think about that. And so the IP challenge is, how do we create it? How do we store it? How do we protect it? And then how do we deploy and monetize it? So right now we've got two of the most famous singers who ever lived, and we're about to send them out on a tour and they're deceased. So think about that, Carl. Humans have sought immortality throughout time, and AI is accelerating that.
Well, that reminds me, and I'm going to date myself here. When IBM back in the day was advertising, television for the most part, there was a great quote by the then, I think, CEO. It might have been Gerstner. I can't remember exactly which one. But here's the quote. They were using Charlie Chaplin historical footage, and they edited it together in a very unique and creative, humorous way. And it resonated in the marketplace. But his quote was, "We will never use a living spokesperson to promote, market, and advertise IBM products because we don't know what they will say on any given day. We're much more comfortable with deceased famous celebrities because they can't talk."
Yeah. You're never going to have the O.J. Hertz problem, ever.
Exactly.
That's exactly right. That's exactly
Exactly.
right. So,
It was
but
funny.
it's interesting to watch because I think there's people that fear AI, but I think this next generation of leaders, they're already digital natives. They
Right.
are. And
Right.
so, our job as the attorneys when it comes to data scraping is just to make sure we're educating our clients to say, look, you need either consent or payment to the rights holder. Because we're constantly trying to find this balance between fostering AI innovation and protecting the existing IP right. So as lawyers, we distinguish between AI generated content that's truly creative and that which is merely a result of like a programmed algorithm. And that's a challenge for us. But creator rights are always going to trump the scraper. They just are.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think to your earlier point, the court did come down on the right side of that particular case. And there are many more on their way to courts everywhere. I want to pivot a little bit here because we touched on culture in an M&A environment and how important it is to think through the merging of cultures. But Melinda, have actually led a team. You are, in effect, the CEO. I noted you didn't call yourself that, but I'm going to call you that. So the culture you've built comes from the top. So you are setting the cultural guidelines, if you will. But you're also recruiting and hiring young attorneys. So let's talk about two things. One, your recruiting process and how you do it. And secondly, the challenges, unique or not, that you as a female attorney have faced in the marketplace. You spoke about it a little bit at the top of the show, but I'm interested to hear your perspective on that moment in time, which is right now, where you as the female lead CEO of a growing and obviously well-reputed law firm handle the recruitment process.
Yeah, it's difficult, honestly, especially today. It's very, very hard. And we're looking for, I'll tell you that we're probably understaffed because I only hire rock stars and they're very hard to find, right? Like I can find people that I can put in front of a client and take to a golf outing and I know they're going to represent the brand well, but they don't have the intellect to do the work. And I can find people that I can put behind a door and shove the work under the door and say, shove it back when it's done, but you're never going to be client facing. But I can't, it's very hard to find both. It's very challenging. And I will tell you, when I get up every day, it's my goal to both change the practice of sports law for the better and to laugh a lot. Now, Carl, that makes planning my day super challenging, right? It's very difficult. So the people that I surround myself with and the culture that we have created is really important to me. Like I said, it's difficult. I mean, I will tell you, I try to find that intersection of where confidence meets approachability, because I think that's really important as you hire people and mentor them and try and bring them up. They need to see you being decisive and addressing challenges head on, but they also need to see you being consistent and finding the humor in everything. But you have to have the right clay for that sort of culture. So, and that the genesis of that, if I can tell you just a quick story, is when I was really young, I was in a meeting once early on in my career where this LA agent had just gotten off a call with a very contentious call with a tax attorney. And he slammed the phone down and he looked at me and he said, if an attorney and an IRS agent were both drowning and you could only save one of them, would you go to lunch or would you surf the internet? And that's the moment in my career where I knew I'd be a good lawyer. Because I said, I'm going to be the kind of attorney people want to work with. No one's ever going to say that about me when they hang up the phone. And I recruit people with that story in mind. I want them to be the kind of attorney you want to work with. I want to find people that do the right thing no matter the consequences, that take the high road, that are solution-oriented and look for the win-win, And so not only am I selective about who we represent and the clients we take on, I'm selective about the people we hire. And those traits are disarming in the practice of law. And because of that, and because of this unique culture, it's hard to recruit. But I would also say because of our unique culture, that's why my clients, and I would like to think a lot of opposing counsel, would probably save me from drowning. And if not, it's at least what I choose to believe, Carl.
Right. Life preservers all around me.
Yeah.
So 2008 to 2025, okay, we're pushing 20 years here. How many attorneys in the fold that you have recruited and retained being the key phrase, and how many have been with you from the outset? And if not from the outset, what's the longest tenure currently sitting within Apollo?
Yeah, so we pride ourselves on retention, right? So we don't have a lot of turnover. I will tell you where our turnover comes from, and it's the same reason I answered that it's difficult to recruit. Our turnover comes from finding young people and trying to mentor and grow them. The people that started this firm, the founders, the partners, we've all been here forever, 15 years plus. I mean, just consistency, which is very important to me because I think it's important to our clients. But we are finding it more challenging because this is a different generation, right? When I was interviewing, I would always tell people what I could do for them, right? I'm gonna work hard, I'm gonna be smart, I'm gonna make you look good to your clients, I'm gonna learn something every day, I'm gonna be meticulous, and I would always tell them what I could do. And I think the culture shift is, I get a lot of, what's your vacation policy, and how many mental health days, and can I bring my dog to the office, and what is the hybrid, and
Or do I have to come to the office at all?
at all? And so that's been our challenge, is we're a business of osmosis, right? And I'm always surprised that I'm never going to sit down and train you how to be a lawyer. You're going to learn to be a lawyer because you're going to listen to me. And you're going to hear me on conference calls, and you're going to watch me with clients, and you're going to have this, I don't want to date myself, but a lot of years of experience come to bear that you can watch in action. And so it's shocking to me how many of our interns and young people will knock on my door at 6 o'clock and say, anything else, I'm heading out. And I'm thinking, you see on the calendar that I'm about to negotiate a very large deal. You don't want to sit and listen to that? And so that's been our challenge. That challenge is ubiquitous. Every business owner, every law firm owner, everybody I know that I talk to is having that issue. And so we need to meet people where they are, and we need to figure that out, because we have to mentor and train and groom the next generation. We have to. And so we just need to figure that out.
So tell me why you think that is, because when you and I first got to know each other, we had this exact conversation, because you were in the midst of hiring. It was just post-COVID. People were used to not having to do stuff, let alone come into the office. Are we talking generational? Was the COVID moment in time a teaching moment in a not so good way? What's your take on the why that it's challenging for you and challenging for others to recruit and find the gold nuggets?
Yeah, I think if you find someone that actually knows the answer, let me know.
Yeah, right.
I will tell you, I think there's a generational shift, and I think we caused the problem in the way that we raised our kids, right? I mean, we grew up in the throw dirt on it, get over it generation, right? And so then we parented our kids differently, so we're the ones that are guilty of it. For example, I tell people what I think. And it's not that I'm insensitive, I just tell it like it is, because the practice of sports law does not care about your feelings. Just because a client is upset doesn't mean they have a legal case. But subscribing to that does not work in mentoring and in training new people, because the sensitivity is a lot different. I mean, it's people bring their whole selves to work today, for better or for worse. And you can't do what I just said in how we practice law. You have to be very sensitive. You have to be very nurturing. They grew up with helicopter parents. You have to really take that into account. And I think that's a piece of it. I think that what I look for when I'm recruiting is I look for 4 things. I look for instinct, energy, humor, and grit. Instinct, because I can't train it. You've either got it or you don't. Energy, because you need it. I mean, as we've talked about this whole podcast, this whole industry is changing by the minute. You better have the energy to keep up. Humor, because what we do is so stressful and so intense, and we just have to laugh about it every day, because I want a culture where people enjoy coming to work. And grit, because I can't train that either. So I tell people, hey, if you want to make it in this industry, you need to be where the decisions are being made. And that is not at home in your jammies walking your dog. It's just not. You need to be the first in. You need to be the last to leave. You need to be a sponge. That's how you learn. You need to make yourself indispensable. You need to be fun. If you have a certain resume and a certain pedigree, I'm going to assume you can do the work. But are you someone that I want to be doing a deal with at 2 a.m? And it's tricky. You asked about being a woman, and I would tell you I'm comfortable being the only woman in the room because I often am. But one of the challenges of being a woman is you're penalized for doing what's considered an asset in a man. And the example I like to give is if a man leaves work early to go to his kid's soccer game, he's a great dad. If a woman leaves early, she's a soccer mom. And I have a problem with that because I think being assertive and confident and ambitious, I think those are good traits regardless of gender. And so I will say that I think this younger generation is getting that right. I think men are embracing their whole selves and their whole life more. And I think women are comfortable with what I just said. Like, I don't care what you brand me, this is how I'm going to live my life. And so I think that's one of the upsides because I do think this younger generation is bringing a lot of really good things to bear to the table as well.
No, I love that. That's super encouraging. I'm so pleased to hear you say that. And you're obviously saying it with conviction. That's awesome. One more sport-related question, and then we'll go into the fun part. 2025. Over the next 10 years, the U.S. will be hosting the World Cup in 2020, the LA Olympic Games in 2028, and some super interesting sports are being added for the first time, cricket among them. So there's this notion as we look out, and then Salt Lake City 2034, right? So over the next 10 years, 3 major global tentpole events coming, but it's also fomenting a rapid rise in new things. And when I say new things, I mean, like, use the cricket example, right? I mean, cricket in India is a combination of the NFL, the Premier League football team, the NBA, all rolled into one because it's like 1.5 billion people and every single one of them watches cricket incessantly. The point I'm making, or actually the point I'd like you to elaborate on, is for your sports and entertainment practice, as you look out, call it just 5 years. I mean, 2034 is well down the pike. What opportunities do you see? What challenges do you see? Does this bode well for the sporting world, whether it's fans, whether it's teams, leagues, federations, athletes, etc.?
Yeah,
sponsors,
absolutely.
Let's not forget them.
Don't forget the sponsors. It absolutely bodes well. I mean, it is so exciting what's about to happen. And I don't have a crystal ball, but I think it's going to be all good, right? I mean, for the United States, I love it. We're going to have the world's eyeballs on us at a time where we really do need to be brought together. And one of my absolute favorite things about sports is it brings people together. So the fact that we're in this crazy time politically, and we're about to have these 3 events that can bring people together regardless of what you think about politics or anything else, I think is amazing for our country and amazing for sports. Our law firm is often focused on growth sports, so it's really exciting. You mentioned cricket and what's happening as it is coming to the United States, but Frisbee is now being taken seriously. We represent a disc league. There's a surf league. We represent the American Cornhole League. I mean, cornhole's a international sport now where we represent the league, and so I think the opportunity for these smaller sports, because it's always been dominating monetizable sports, right? The NBA, the NFL, and to have sort of a lens with which we can see these other sports in real action, I think is really exciting. So I think as long as everybody is strategically placed, the service providers, the investment bankers, the lawyers, the accountants, but also the brands, the sponsors, to take advantage of what's about to happen in our country. And I think a rising tide lifts all boats. So even for something we're not involved in, I'm being asked to make connectivity. Hey, can you make this introduction? Do you know this brand? And I'm like, I'd love to. I'd love to help in any way, even if it doesn't concern my law firm, because a rising tide lifts all boats in this industry. So I just think it's phenomenal. I think the timing couldn't be better, and I'm bullish about it.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I completely agree with you. It's a healthy ecosystem today, but it's going to be healthier, stronger, broader, deeper, wider, all those sort of attributes you might think of in the world of sport and entertainment. Listen, Melinda, we've got just a few minutes left, and I'm going to go now to the same 3 questions I asked every guest. We call them the hot cues. So, first one, your favorite mistake. This is the one where you really messed up, right? But you recovered from it. How did you recover from it, and what? Well, Carl,
I listen to your podcast, so I'm ready for these questions. So First, I would say my biggest mistake is when I was younger, I hired too fast and I fired too slow. And so now I'm the opposite. I hire slow and I fire fast. I do not panic hire. We thoroughly vet anyone considering working with us, whether as an employee or a client. And that's new because I always sort of subscribed to being a first mover, right? The fast eat the slow. That was sort of my mantra. But I've learned, with wisdom and a little age, that sometimes the second mouse gets the cheese, right? So we have a rule here at Apollo Law where we say no serial killers, right? We want to thoroughly vet anyone that comes in, and then both again on the client and the employee side, we coach, counsel, and cut. And I learned it the hard way, frankly. We had a really, really high-profile team owner, and my gut told me this guy's going to be high maintenance. He is going to burn our banked reputational capital by association. But guess what I did? I moved my own goalpost, and it was a disaster. And so in a very, very fragile manner, I had to reputation. And Carl, when I say fragile, I mean fragile, not like a flower, but fragile like a bomb, right? And so we were able to extricate ourselves from it. But what I've learned is, you got to kind of maximize your at-bats, if I can use a sports analogy because I'm a sports lawyer. The best hitters in the MLB, they get a base hit, 3 out of every 10 at-bats?
Yeah,
so
maybe.
Maybe. So you maximize your at-bats. You fail fast, you minimize your downside, you get up and you swing again. And so we build processes to avoid failure, and we put guardrails in place. I mean, for example, our firm, we minimize float. Why? Because we had a client that was too big to fail, and then, wait for it, they failed. So now, our accounting department monitors and manages the float, because you're only going to let that happen to you one time, right? I mean, mistakes are your greatest educators. So
That's great wisdom, and our audience listening is going to love that, and you're really good at sort of identifying key phrases. I love that. Second one, this is a fun one. This is the favorite live concert or show that you ever attended that featured a female artist or a female-led band.
So, my guess is you get a lot of Taylor Swift. So while that is an excellent answer, I'm going to save that this time, and I'm going to go with, I went to Super Bowl 50. Do you remember when the Panthers played the Broncos? It was 2016 at Levi Stadium. And the halftime show was Coldplay, Bruno Mars, and who?
Couldn't tell you.
Beyonce. Yeah, it was Beyonce. And I will tell you, she's going to be my answer because of that Super Bowl experience. She is just fierce. I mean, her vocals, her stage presence, her high energy. She's got this theme of empowerment. She makes a cultural impact. I mean, the woman is just a masterclass in entertainment. So, you had these two other legends on stage, Coldplay, Bruno Mars, and they were completely overwhelmed by Beyonce.
Well, at a certain level, that doesn't surprise me.
Right.
That's a great answer, though. I love that answer.
Yeah.
So the last one.
She doesn't lip sync. I mean, you have this outdoor stadium.
No, right.
It's a tough venue. I mean, if you think about the Super Bowl halftime show, it's 25 minutes. So you have the most important sports game in the world going on. Halftime comes, and they've got to do stage sit-up, do a world-class concert in 13 minutes, break it down, and go back to football. And world-class concert, I mean, she brought it. It was incredible.
That's awesome to hear. I remember the very first time they did a quote-unquote Super Bowl halftime show where they had to do that production moving and stuff. It was like, oof.
Crazy. It's crazy. To witness. Yeah.
Crazy. Okay, the last one, and it's it's a really good one. In fact, it's my favorite one. So this is your favorite word. We all know words matter. It's many times what you don't say is as important as what you do say. So your favorite word and why? My favorite word, without exception or qualification, is moxie. Moxie means bold, courageous, confident, determined. I was at a leaders retreat, and this same question came up, and you're supposed to write down your word and then discuss it. And I was the first to write down my word because it's always been my word, but I was the last to speak because my last name starts with a Z. So the other leaders started going down the line, Carl. They're saying hope, kindness,
family, generosity, very traditional choices. And I'm thinking, oh boy, they got to me. And it was Moxie, but it describes who I am, who I've always been, and who I'm always going to continue to be.
I love that. And you said it with chutzpah.
I said it with Moxie.
Exactly. Melinda, I can't thank you enough. This has been a great session, tons of wisdom in this, and you were an awesome guest. Thanks so much for joining us today on the Best Boss Ever podcast.
Carol, the pleasure was mine. Thank you very much.